Marriage is one of the most beautiful and sacred gifts God has given to humanity. It was not an accident, nor was it a mere social arrangement. From the very beginning, God designed marriage to be a reflection of something much greater, something eternal. When He created man and saw that it was not good for him to be alone, He fashioned woman, not from the dust of the ground, but from the man's own ribs, signifying unity, closeness, and shared purpose. And when Adam beheld Eve for the first time, he didn't just see another creature, he saw a part of himself. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, He declared. It was the first love story ever written, authored by God Himself. But marriage is not just about companionship. It is a divine covenant, an earthly picture of a heavenly reality. The Bible tells us that the relationship between a husband and wife mirrors the relationship between Christ and the church. Christ loved the church with a love so deep, so sacrificial, that He laid down His life for her. That is the kind of love a husband is called to have for his wife, not a love that is selfish, not a love that is conditional, but a love that gives, a love that serves, a love that sacrifices. And just as the church responds to Christ with love, honor, and devotion, the wife is called to respond to her husband in the same way, not out of obligation, but out of love, trust, and faith in God's divine order. This is not about superiority or control. It is about harmony. It is about two people walking together, supporting one another, lifting each other up, and together reflecting the beauty of God's love to the world. The world today has tried to redefine marriage. It has turned it into something temporary, something that can be molded and shaped according to human desires. But God's design has never changed. A marriage built on human wisdom alone will crumble under the weight of life's trials. But a marriage built on God's foundation will stand the test of time. It will weather the storms because it is anchored in something greater than feelings, greater than circumstances, greater than personal ambition. A godly marriage is not just about two people trying to make it work. It is about inviting God into the very center of that relationship. It is about saying, Lord, we cannot do this on our own. We need You to guide us, to strengthen us, to shape us into the husband and wife You have called us to be. When God is at the center, love becomes deeper, forgiveness becomes easier, and purpose becomes clearer. This is why prayer is so important. A couple that prays together stays together because prayer keeps the focus on God rather than on personal grievances. Prayer humbles the heart, softens the spirit, and reminds both husband and wife that they are not fighting against each other, but standing together, fighting for something greater. Love is not just a feeling. Feelings change, but love is a choice, a commitment, a daily decision to honor God by honoring each other. It is choosing patience when frustration arises. It is choosing kindness when words could wound. It is choosing faithfulness when the world tempts with distractions. It is choosing to love even when it is difficult, because that is exactly what Christ did for us. God's design for marriage is not meant to be a burden. It is meant to be a blessing. It is a place where two people can experience the fullness of love, joy, and unity. It is where character is shaped, faith is strengthened, and God's goodness is displayed. The world may mock it, society may undermine it, but God's truth remains unshaken. A marriage that follows God's design is a marriage that will not just survive, but thrive. And so the call today is not just to be a husband or a wife in the way the world defines it, but to embrace the divine calling that marriage truly is. To love as Christ loved, to serve as Christ served, to forgive as Christ forgave, and to build a relationship that does not just satisfy earthly desires, but glorifies the God who created it. Because when a husband and wife and God are united as one, nothing can tear them apart. In every marriage, there is a rhythm, a divine order set in place by God. It is not the world's idea of leadership, nor is it built on pride or power. It is a design woven with love, humility, and selflessness. When God brought man and woman together, He gave them roles not to create division, but to create harmony. These roles, when embraced under God's guidance, form the foundation of a home that thrives in unity, peace, and love. The husband is called to lead, but not as a dictator, not with a heavy hand, not to demand his way. He is called to lead with love, with the same love that Christ showed when He gave Himself up for the church. That is the kind of leadership God asks of a husband, the kind that serves, protects, and sacrifices. A husband who follows Christ will not see his position as a privilege to be exploited, but as a responsibility to care for the heart of his wife. He will lay down his pride, his selfishness, and his need to control, and instead he will lead by example. He will lead with patience when life is hard, with understanding when his wife is burdened, and with strength when his family needs stability. This is not weakness, it's the greatest kind of strength. It takes far more strength to love selflessly than to dominate with authority. It takes strength to hold your wife's hand and pray with her when you don't have all the answers. It takes strength to admit when you are wrong, to seek forgiveness, and to choose humility over pride. That is the leadership God calls a husband to, a leadership grounded in love, built on faith, and modeled after Christ himself. And what about the wife? God has given her a role just as vital, just as beautiful. She is called to support, to respect, and to walk alongside her husband, not beneath him, but beside him as his partner in grace. This is not a call to silence her voice or suppress her gifts. It is a call to strengthen their union through encouragement, wisdom, and trust. A wife who respects her husband breathes life into him. Her words can lift him when he feels like a failure, and her support can fuel his courage when the weight of the world rests on his shoulders. Respect is not agreeing with everything. It is not pretending everything is perfect. It is choosing to believe in the man God is shaping him to be, even when he stumbles. It is choosing to speak words that build up, not tear down. When a wife respects her husband, it inspires him to be the man God has called him to be. And when a husband loves his wife as Christ loved the church, it frees her to flourish in the beauty of who God created her to be. This is not a battle for control. It is not a struggle for power. It is a dance of grace where the husband and wife move together, each fulfilling their God-given role, each leaning on the other, each guided by the hand of God. When this divine balance is honored, it creates a home filled with peace. It creates a relationship that withstands the storms. It creates a marriage that reflects the heart of God to a world that desperately needs to see what real love looks like. But we cannot do this in our own strength. Our human nature resists it. Pride rises up. Selfishness creeps in. The world shouts at us to do things our own way. That is why we need God at the center. Only through him can a husband lead with true love. Only through him can a wife support with true respect. Only through him can two imperfect people build a marriage that glorifies a perfect God. When a husband lays down his life for his wife, and when a wife uplifts and honors her husband, something sacred happens. Their marriage becomes a testimony, a light that points others to the power of God's love. It tells the world that love is not about winning arguments or proving superiority. Love is about serving. Love is about forgiving. Love is about choosing each other every single day, just God has chosen us. Because when a husband, a wife, and God walk together in their divine design, love will always prevail. A marriage built on human strength alone can only go so far. There may be good days, times when love feels easy and the journey together seems smooth. But there will also be days when everything feels heavy, days when misunderstandings arise, when burdens press down, and when the road ahead looks uncertain. It is in those moments that the foundation of a marriage is truly tested, and that is why from the very beginning a husband and a wife must choose to build their marriage on something stronger than their own abilities. They must build it on God. When God is at the center of a marriage, everything changes. Love is no longer dependent on feelings that come and go. Patience is not just a personal virtue, but a gift that flows from faith. Forgiveness is not a struggle, but an overflow of the grace we ourselves have received from God. The home becomes more than just a place where two people live together. It becomes a sanctuary, a place where the presence of God dwells. It is not that difficulties suddenly disappear. Storms will still come. There will still be days when tempers flare, when words are spoken in frustration, or when the pressures of life push hard against the relationship. But a marriage with God at the center stands on a different foundation. It stands on the promise that His strength is made perfect in our weakness. It stands on the assurance that when we are at the end of ourselves, He is there to carry us forward. Prayer becomes the lifeline in such a marriage. When a husband and wife kneel together before God, something powerful happens. Hearts are softened. Pride begins to fade. The things that once seemed so important, the need to be right, the need to prove a point suddenly seems so small in the light of eternity. Prayer brings the couple back to what truly matters. It reminds them that they are not fighting against each other, but standing together hand in hand with God leading the way. There is a strength in unity when God holds it together. A husband and wife can face the challenges of life with confidence, not because they are perfect, but because they are held by a perfect God. Financial struggles, health issues, the pressures of raising children, or the loss of a loved one, these things can shake any marriage. But when God is the foundation, those trials become opportunities to grow closer, to cling to each other, and to cling to Him. A marriage centered on God is also a light to those around it. In a world where so many marriages crumble and where love is often treated as temporary, a couple that endures with God's strength becomes a testimony. Neighbors notice. Friends take note. Children grow up seeing what it means to rely on God, not only in church, but in the everyday moments of life. They see parents who forgive quickly, who speak words of encouragement, and who face hardships with faith instead of fear. This kind of marriage does not happen by accident. It takes intentional choices every single day. It takes choosing to pray together when it feels easier to walk away. It takes choosing to open the Bible and seek wisdom together when everything feels confusing. It takes choosing to trust God's timing when answers don't quickly. And it takes choosing to love when it feels undeserved. Because that is exactly what God has done for us. A husband and wife walking hand in hand with God are not just building a marriage for today, they are building a legacy. They are laying a foundation that will impact their children and their grandchildren. They are showing the world what is possible when two hearts are surrendered not only to each other, but to the God who brought them together. Because when a husband, a wife, and God stand united, nothing can break what He has built. Every marriage, no matter how strong or deeply rooted in love, will face trials. There will be seasons when the winds of hardship blow hard against the home. Seasons when disappointment settles in, when misunderstandings pile up, when hearts grow weary from the weight of life. It's in those moments that many couples begin to wonder if their love is enough. But the truth is, no marriage can endure the storms of life on human strength alone. It is faith in God, faith in His promises, and faith in His ability to heal what is broken that becomes the anchor when everything else is shaken. There are times when a husband and wife will look at each other across the room and feel the distance between them, even though they are under the same roof. Words may have been exchanged in anger. Silence may have crept in, building walls where there was once laughter. Those are the moments when doubt whispers, maybe this isn't working. But God's voice speaks a different word. He says, hold on. Trust me, I am working even when you cannot see it. Forgiveness becomes a lifeline in those difficult times. Real forgiveness, not the kind that simply says the words but still holds on to the hurt. Forgiveness that chooses to let go, not because the other person deserves it, but because God has forgiven us. There is no marriage that can survive without forgiveness. Husbands will fail, wives will make mistakes. We are all human, but grace is the bridge that keeps hearts connected when sin tries to separate. Some of the most beautiful marriages are not the ones that never faced trouble, but the ones that faced it, endured it, and emerged stronger. The couple who stood side by side when the diagnosis came. The couple who knelt together in prayer when finances crumbled. The couple who clung to each other and to God when grief swept over their home like a flood. Those couples are not perfect. They are simply anchored in something greater than their circumstances. They know that God is still good even when life is not. There are moments when the enemy will try to convince you that giving up is easier. Walking away seems like the solution, but what God joins together is meant to withstand every attack. The enemy hates unity because unity reflects the very heart of God. A husband and wife standing together with God in their midst is a picture of divine strength. That is why the enemy targets marriages. He plants seeds of bitterness. He fans the flames of pride. He whispers lies that say, you deserve better. You're not appreciated. You'll never be happy here. But God's truth is louder for those who are willing to listen. He says, I can restore. I can heal. I can make all things new. Faith in God doesn't remove the problems, but it changes how we face them. Faith reminds the husband that his role is to love, even when his pride is wounded. Faith encourages the wife to speak words of life, even when frustration tempts her to tear down. Faith draws both hearts back to the cross, where Christ bore every sin, every pain, and every failure. It reminds them that they are not alone. The God who parted the seas, who raised the dead, who calmed the storm, he is the same God who stands ready to work in their marriage. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not a sudden change in circumstances, but a change in our hearts. A husband who begins to see his wife through God's eyes. A wife who chooses to believe the best about her husband instead of focusing on his flaws. A couple who chooses to pray together even when their hearts are heavy. Those are the miracles that rebuild marriages. God never promised that marriage would be easy, but he did promise that his grace would be sufficient. He promised that his strength would carry us when our strength was gone. He promised that his love would never fail. And when a husband, a wife, and God walk through the fire together, they come out refined, not destroyed. A marriage is never just about two people. It is always about more. From the very beginning, God designed marriage to extend beyond the husband and the wife, to ripple outward and touch the lives of those around them, especially their children and the generations that follow. What a husband and wife build together is not merely a home where they can find comfort. It is a foundation upon which future lives will be shaped. The choices made in that home, the love displayed, the faith lived out, it all leaves a legacy that will outlive them both. Children watch far more than they listen. They hear the words yes, but it is what they see that leaves the deepest impression. They see how their father treats their mother. They notice whether he leads with love or rules with pride. They see how their mother responds, whether she builds him up with respect or tears him down with criticism. Children are always watching. And what they witness shapes their understanding of love, of commitment, and most importantly, of God. A godly marriage preaches a sermon every single day. It tells the next generation what faith looks like when it is tested. It shows them that real love is not found in movies or fleeting emotions, but in daily sacrifice and forgiveness. It teaches them that marriage is not disposable, that when things get hard, you do not walk away, you turn to God and press on together. These are lessons that no Sunday school class can fully teach. These are lessons that are not just taught within the walls of a home where God reigns. But it is not only the children under that roof who are watching. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, they all take notice when a marriage stands strong in a world where so many fall apart. A couple who endures together becomes a testimony to God's faithfulness. They become a light in a culture that has grown dark with broken promises and shattered homes. People may not always say it out loud, but they are searching for something real. They are longing to see that lasting love is possible. And when they see it in a husband and wife who have built their lives on God, it stirs something deep within them, a hope that maybe, just maybe, there is something greater to hold on to. The legacy of a godly marriage often stretches further than we will ever know. A son who saw their father pray in the living room during times of crisis grows up to lead his own home in prayer. A daughter who watched her mother forgive with grace becomes a wife who chooses to forgive instead of walking away. And sometimes the impact reaches beyond the family. That struggling neighbor who heard that gentle voice from across the fence. That young couple at church who found encouragement in seeing an older couple still holding hands after decades. Seeds are planted, seeds of hope, seeds of faith, all because a husband and wife chose to build their home on the solid rock of God's truth. But none of this happens by accident. It requires daily surrender. It requires choosing to speak life when criticism feels easier. It requires choosing prayer when worry creeps in. It requires choosing unity when division tries to sneak through the door. It is a constant choice to ask, what kind of legacy are we building? Because every home is building something. The question is not whether a legacy will be left, it is what kind of legacy it will be. God desires for every home to be a place where His presence is felt, where His name is honored, and where His love is displayed. That is the legacy that truly matters. Houses will fade, bank accounts will rise and fall. Heck, the world today is filled with voices pulling marriages in every direction. There are opinions on every side telling husbands how they should lead, how they should respond, redefining love, and even questioning the very purpose of marriage. But when everything is stripped away, when all those voices fade, there is only one voice that truly matters, the voice of God. His word is not outdated, nor is it out of touch with modern life. It is timeless, eternal, and it holds the blueprint for a marriage that not only survives but thrives. God's plan for marriage is rooted in love, but not the kind of love the world talks about. It is not a fleeting feeling. It is not something that depends on how good life is or how easy the other person is to love. It is a love that chooses, a love that endures, a love that reflects Christ himself. That kind of love requires more than human effort. It requires divine strength. It is a love that is patient when tempers rise. It is a love that forgives when words wound. It is a love that says, I am here no matter what, because it is built on the same promise God has made to us: I will never leave you nor forsake you. This love is not self-seeking. It does not demand its own way. It does not keep score. It sacrifices. It gives. It serves. A husband who loves like this will not view his leadership as a right to be wielded, but as a calling to be carried with humility. He will not put his own desires above his wife's needs. He will lead by example through prayer, through patience, through gentleness. And a wife who loves like this will not see her role as a burden, but as a gift. She will stand beside her husband, offering her wisdom, her strength, and her grace. She will speak words that build up, not words that tear down. Together they will walk hand in hand, not because they are perfect, but because they are anchored in something greater than themselves. But this kind of marriage cannot be built in a day. It is built in the small daily choices. It is built when a husband chooses to listen instead of dismiss. It is built when a wife chooses to encourage instead of criticize. It is built when both choose to pray instead of argue. These choices, day after day, shape a home where love is not just spoken but lived. And when that home is centered on God, it becomes a place of peace even when the world outside is in turmoil. There will be days when it feels easier to give up, days when misunderstandings pile up, when the pressures of life squeeze hard, when the enemy whispers that the best days are behind. But God's plan for marriage is not about simply enduring. It is about growing. It is about becoming more like Christ through the challenges, through the sacrifices, through the moments when choosing love requires everything we have. That is when God's power is revealed. That is when his grace carries us. That is when a marriage becomes a testimony not to human strength, but to divine faithfulness. The world is watching. Children are watching. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers are watching. They are searching for something real, something lasting. And when they see a husband, a wife, and God walking together, it speaks louder than any sermon. It tells them that true love is possible, that forgiveness is possible, that hope is possible. Because what God has designed, what God has joined together, no power on earth can tear apart. And so the call is not to perfection, but to surrender, to lay down pride, to embrace grace, to seek God not just in times of trouble, but in every moment, to build a marriage not on fleeting emotions, but on the unshakable foundation of his word. Because when a husband, a wife, and God stand together, they do not just build a home, they build a legacy. They do not just endure, they flourish. And they do not just reflect their own love, they reflect the love of Christ to a world that is desperate to see it.